We all want a world running on clean energy, right? But actually getting there, it's a huge EE puzzle, way bigger than just, putting solar panels everywhere.
Yeah.
We need to totally rethink how our whole energy system works.
Wow.
And that's exactly what we're going to dig into in this deep dive.
Absolutely, yeah.
We've got this super interesting research paper. It really digs deep into the best ways, like the most cost-effective paths, to build a 100% renewable energy system.
Right.
And for you, for those of you who want to really get this stuff, these complex changes, but without drowning in all the technical mumbo jumbo, we're going to break it down. We're going to make it crystal clear what the important bits are.
Yeah, for sure. The study we're looking at today is called, get this, Synergies of Electrical and Sectoral Integration, analyzing geographical multi-node scenarios with sector coupling variations for a transition towards a fully renewables-based energy system.
Wow.
Catchy, huh? It was published in this journal called Energy back in 2023. It's a pretty detailed paper, but the main questions it tackles are really relevant to anyone thinking about, well, the future of energy, really.
Okay, so let's break down this title a bit because it feels like it has all the clues, right? Synergies of electrical and sectoral integration. That makes me think of things working together.
Mm-hmm.
And then geographical multi-node scenarios. Is that like looking at different parts of a country?
Exactly. The researchers realized that switching to renewables isn't just about making electricity.
Right.
It's about how the electricity system works with other stuff, like heating your house or transportation.
Oh, okay.
And they also looked at how energy resources and demand are spread out geographically.
Right.
So that multi-node thing means recognizing that a country isn't one big blob for energy, but it has different regions, each with its own quirks.
Gotcha, so it's more realistic. And so in this deep dive, we're going to be your guides through this research paper. We're going to pull out the truly important findings, the things you really need to know.
Absolutely.
We're going to shine a light on why it's so important to consider, the real-world messiness of geography and how amazingly powerful it can be when you cleverly connect different parts of our energy system.
Yeah.
So get ready for some aha moments. And don't worry, we'll steer clear of overwhelming you with too much data. Ready to dive in?
I am, definitely.
Okay, great. So I guess we should start with why some of the older, more simple ways of looking at this energy transition, they might actually be leading us in the wrong direction.
Yeah, they can be misleading.
This paper, Synergies of Electrical and Sectoral Integration, it really points out the problems with a lot of order studies. They kind of just focused on the power sector, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or they treated a whole country as just one single point in their energy models. What's so wrong about keeping it that simple?
Well, the researchers were pretty blunt about it. They say that one-node systems, those simple ones, deliver two simplistic results. It's like imagine thinking of a whole country as one giant electrical outlet. You completely miss how energy is actually made and used in different parts of that country.
Yeah, so what kind of crucial details do these single-point models miss? What are they overlooking?
Well, first off, they forget that we can't just magically zap tons of electricity across huge distances without any problems.
Oh, all right.
Our transmission lines, the infrastructure, it has limits. There are bottlenecks where the power lines just can't handle that much flow. And also, renewable sources like solar and wind, they're not evenly spread out everywhere.
Okay.
Some areas have tons of sun, others have strong winds. And these models just average everything out, ignoring all those important regional differences. And ignoring geography can lead to some pretty bad decisions, wasting billions on the wrong infrastructure in the wrong places.
So it's like saying, oh, California has a lot of sunshine, so Maine must have the same solar power potential.
Yeah, exactly.
Which obviously isn't true.
Not at all. And because these simple models ignore those geographical details, they can mess up how we invest in renewable energy. The paper calls this a strongly distorted resource allocation.
Distorted, okay.
Meaning, we might pour money into the wrong technologies based on those oversimplified models, only to find out later that getting that energy to where it's needed is way more expensive or just plain impossible.
Makes sense. We're not looking for a quick and easy answer here, right? We want to understand this properly to see the whole picture. So what's the alternative that this study, Synergies of Electrical and Sectoral Integration, what do they recommend instead? I think it's talk about a multi-node approach.
Yeah, that's the one. Instead of treating a country as one blob, they divide it into zones, like nodes on a map.
Okay.
This allows for a much more detailed analysis that considers each region's unique features.
I see. And they use Chile as an example, right? How did they divide Chile using this multi-node approach?
They compared the simple one-node model with two different six-node setups for Chile.
6 nodes.
In one, those 6 nodes were isolated, meaning each region had to rely on its own renewable resources only.
Oh, okay.
But in the other 6-node scenario, they were interconnected, so they could share electricity between them through transmission lines.
Okay, that does sound a lot more like a real energy system. What did they find when they used this multi-node approach?
Well, the paper shows very clearly that a multi-node model better reflects transmission bottlenecks and local resources.
Right, of course.
So it takes into account both the limitations and the special opportunities in different areas, something a single node model just can't do.
Right, that makes sense. And what was the main difference they saw between those isolated and interconnected node scenarios? That seems really important.
Oh, it is. In the isolated one, each region in Chile had to be completely self-sufficient with their renewable energy.
Okay.
So imagine a region with lots of sunshine but not much wind. They'd have to find other, maybe more expensive ways to meet their electricity needs when the sun wasn't shining.
I see.
But in the interconnected scenario, these regions could actually help each other out.
Ah, I see. So like the sunny north could send power to the south when solar production was high, and the windy south could return the favor when their wind resources were strong. So it's like a regional energy sharing system.
Precisely. And the paper points out that Chile has this really diverse geography. Amazing solar in the north, incredible wind potential in the south, and then a big demand center right in the middle. An interconnected system lets you really take advantage of these geographical strengths and even out the ups and downs of renewable energy.
So having a more detailed geographical model is super important for getting accurate results. Now, this paper's title also mentions sectoral integration or sector coupling.
Yeah, it's a key concept.
What exactly does that mean?
Sector coupling is all about connecting different energy sectors that usually work on their own. We're talking electricity, heating and cooling, transportation, and even desalination, which they looked at in this study. What's really cool is that this linking of sectors isn't just about being efficient. It's the most affordable way to go 100% renewable. We can use things that would normally be wasted and share infrastructure.
So instead of just making renewable electricity for homes and businesses, we're thinking about how that clean power can also heat our buildings, fuel our cars, and even make fresh water where it's scarce.
Exactly. And in this paper, Synergies of Electrical and Sectoral Integration, they looked at different levels of this coupling. They had scenarios for just power, P, then power and heat, pH, then power, heat, and transport, PHT, and finally one with power, heat, transport, and desalination, PHTD. So they really explored the possibilities.
Okay. And they found that this sector coupling really changed things, right? The paper says power sector simulations can lead to a strongly distorted resource allocation compared to scenarios that include other sectors. That sounds like a similar problem to the one with the simplistic geography.
It is, yeah. When you only look at the power sector by itself, you miss out on ways to make the whole system more efficient and flexible by connecting it with other sectors.
Right.
For example, let's say you have extra renewable electricity at some point. Instead of just wasting it, you could use it to make hydrogen.
Okay.
This is done through a process called electrolysis, which is a key power-to-X technology. And this hydrogen, it can be stored and used later as a clean fuel for vehicles or to provide heat for industries. Think of X as anything that needs energy that isn't directly electricity, like fuel for airplanes or heat for factories. Power-to-X is using clean electricity to create those other energy carriers.
Oh, that's really smart, using that extra renewable energy to meet needs in other sectors. What are some other examples of these sector coupling benefits that they probably looked at in the study?
Well, electric vehicles and heat pumps are great examples. When there's plenty of renewable electricity, EVs can charge up, acting like a flexible load on the grid.
Okay, yeah.
And in the future, some EVs might even be able to send power back to the grid when needed, helping to keep it stable. Similarly, heat pumps, which run on electricity, can replace those old fossil fuel-based heating systems, connecting the power and heating sectors directly.
Right, right. So by looking at things more holistically, we can create a stronger, more efficient energy system overall. What was the main conclusion of the paper when they considered both the geographical complexity and the sector coupling?
Their big finding was that the cheapest way to do it, the lowest cost solution, happens when you include transmission lines and you have a multi-node, interconnected, and fully sector-coupled energy system. Basically, the model that reflects the real-world geography and how different energy sectors can work together, that gives you the most cost-effective path to 100% renewable energy.
This is where things get really interesting. When they looked at these optimized scenarios, what were the key technologies that stood out, the ones that played the biggest role?
Well, in all the scenarios they projected out to 2050, solar PV was king.
Wow.
It was a whopping 83 to 97% of the total installed capacity for electricity generation. For a country like Chile, with so much sun, they even suggested calling it a solar to X economy instead of the more general power to X idea.
Solar really takes the crown in this study. But what about other renewable sources like wind power? Did they still have a part to play?
Wind power did show up more in the coupled six-node scenarios, particularly when those nodes were isolated. So it seems like in places where sending a lot of solar power might be tricky or expensive, local wind resources become more important to achieve energy independence.
Okay.
But overall, in terms of sheer capacity, solar was the clear leader.
And with so much variable renewable energy like solar and wind, energy storage must be essential, right? To keep the lights on when the sun's not shining or the wind's not blowing.
Oh, absolutely. The study found that gas storage became the most common type of storage across all the scenarios.
Interesting. Gas storage.
Yeah, this is mainly because of the power-to-gas processes needed to make synthetic e-fuels.
Okay.
But other electricity storage technologies, like batteries and pumped hydro, they were also really important for keeping the grid stable and balancing supply and demand in the short term.
And you mentioned hydrogen earlier as part of that power to X idea. Where did hydrogen fit into their findings?
Well, water electrolysis using electricity to split water into hydrogen and oxygen was identified as a crucial technology for making green hydrogen.
Right.
And that hydrogen is then used to make other e-fuels that are needed to decarbonize sectors that are hard to electrify directly, like shipping and aviation. It's like baking a cake. Solar power is the oven, hydrogen is the key ingredient, and then the e-fuel is the final cake, a fuel we can use in existing engines, but is made from clean sources.
So solar makes the electricity creates hydrogen, and then that hydrogen gets transformed into fuels for ships and planes. It's like a whole clean energy chain. Now, for the bottom line, what did the study say about the costs and the emission reductions in these different scenarios?
Well, they found that even though the simple one-node scenario seemed cheapest at first, that was because it totally ignored the cost of building and running a nationwide electricity grid.
Right. Makes sense. You got to factor that in.
The six-node interconnected scenarios, they needed more upfront investment in infrastructure, but they ended up being more cost-effective than those isolated six-node setups in the long run.
So it's cheaper to invest in sharing the power efficiently than to have each region try to do everything on its own. What about the effect of integrating different energy sectors, that sector coupling? How did that affect costs?
Having strong sector coupling, especially when they included transport and desalination, had a positive impact on the overall system cost.
Good news.
By connecting these sectors in a smart way, the whole system could operate more efficiently. So you wouldn't need as much capacity in any one sector, and you'd be using those renewable resources better.
And the biggest question for the future greenhouse gas emissions, did these high renewable scenarios actually get us to net zero emissions?
Yes, they did. All the scenarios in the study reached net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2050. However, they did note that the more complex multi-node systems, and the ones with more sector coupling, took a bit longer to show the full reduction in emissions compared to that simple one-node model. Again, this shows that overly simplified models might give a too optimistic timeline for the energy transition in the real world.
So it seems like really digging into the details, the geographical spread of resources, and how energy sectors can work together gives you a more accurate and ultimately more cost-effective way to get to a zero-emission future, even if it looks more complicated at first.
Absolutely. And we talked before about the power to X economy, or solar to X for Chile. Can you explain what that kind of energy system looks like?
Sure. In a power to X or solar to X economy, electricity from renewables, mainly solar, becomes the primary energy source. But the key is converting that clean electricity into other forms of energy. That's the 2X part, things like hydrogen, synthetic fuels, even heat. It's about meeting a wider range of energy needs.
Yeah, and it makes the whole system more integrated and flexible. Direct electrification is super important, especially for things like electric cars and heating homes with heat pumps.
Right.
But it's not the only answer.
Exactly. For sectors that are harder to electrify directly, like heavy industry or long-distance shipping or airplanes, those X fuels are essential.
Right. Green hydrogen made from renewable electricity, that's a basic building block for a lot of these cleaner synthetic fuels.
Okay.
And for a country like Chile, with all that sunshine, the study really emphasizes that solar to X economy is the best way to describe their potential energy future. Their simulation showed that by 2050, solar PV could be providing the vast majority of both the installed capacity and the actual electricity produced.
Imagine massive solar farms not only powering homes and businesses, but also making hydrogen, which is then turned into fuel for ships crossing the ocean. It's a pretty amazing vision of how our energy system could change.
It is. And there are so many benefits to a system like that. It can be more decentralized, with energy production happening closer to where it's used.
Yeah.
It encourages stronger connections between different energy sectors, as we've been talking about. And it makes the whole system more flexible, able to handle the ups and downs of renewable energy sources and the changing energy demands of different sectors.
Right.
It's really about meeting our energy needs in a sustainable way.
So for our listeners, what's the key takeaway as you think about the future of energy and how we get to a cleaner system?
The main message from this deep dive into synergies of electrical and sectoral integration is that reaching 100% renewable energy is more than just swapping out fossil fuels. To do it right, to make it cost-effective and actually work in the real world, we have to consider all the complexities. We can't ignore the geographical realities or the amazing potential of different energy sectors working together.
We need to stop using those overly simplistic models, the one-size-fits-all approach. By considering things like the limits of energy transmission and actively looking for ways to create synergy between electricity, heating, transportation, and other energy sectors, we can map out a more realistic and ultimately more successful path towards a sustainable energy future.
And for countries with abundant renewable resources, like Chile with its solar potential, that solar to X concept is really promising. It's not just about making clean electricity. It's about using that electricity to create clean fuels that can help us decarbonize even the toughest parts of our economy.
So here's a thought for you to chew on. Think about where you live, or maybe some other country that you're interested in. How do their unique geographical features, their access to solar, wind, geothermal, or other renewables, and their specific energy needs, how do those things affect the best ways for them to transition to a 100% renewable energy system?
Yeah.
There's no one-size-fits-all solution, and understanding those local differences is key.
Definitely. This deep dive into synergies of electrical and sectoral integration, hopefully it's given you a good overview of this research and its implications, without getting too bogged down in the technical details.
We'd love to hear your thoughts, any questions that came up for you. Maybe this has even inspired you to look into the research that's happening in your own region. Until our next deep dive, keep exploring.